Breaking news this morning, Massachusetts State Police Trooper Michael Proctor has been fired from his position at the department. Proctor's termination comes following his appearance before a state police trial board over allegations of misconduct while working as the lead investigator in the high-profile Karen Reed case. Reed is accused in the death of her boyfriend, Boston police officer John O'Keefe, and is scheduled to be retried on the charges. This morning, Colonel Jeffrey Noble says he has accepted the board's recommendation to terminate Proctor. The veteran state police trooper was relieved of duty just hours after the first Karen Reed trial ended in a hung jury back in July of last year. He was suspended without pay weeks later. WBZ's Christina Rex joins us now to discuss more about the decision to fire Trooper Proctor. Christina, you've been following this case since the very beginning, as well as some of those fallouts. Was anyone really not expecting this?
No, I don't think this is necessarily a surprising decision by the state police. You know, they had to go through this process that's required before a trooper is terminated, which I think maybe surprised a lot of people who are learning about it for the first time. But I think it's also important to remember there were two allegations here that Trooper Proctor was facing. We all have heard about these text messages that he sent on his personal phone about Karen Reed. That's been kind of the main speaking point. But there was also an allegation that at one point he had gone out with a Canton police officer drinking and then driven his cruiser afterwards. So this firing, there were two allegations that he ended up, getting in trouble for.
Absolutely. You were in the courtroom, too, yesterday for another Karen Reed hearing. Do you think this decision will have any significant impact on the case? Where does it go from here? It's, of course, set to begin in just 2 weeks now.
Yeah, it is interesting, actually, because prosecutors in the case had filed a motion last week asking the judge to basically forbid any mention during trial of any open internal affairs investigations. So this is no longer an open internal affairs investigation.
Right.
So you can see that the fact that Trooper Proctor has been terminated now, that's probably going to come out at trial. Whether the state chooses to call him or the defense chooses to call him, it's hard to imagine that it won't be mentioned in Karen Reed's second trial that he's since been fired for his behavior in connection with this case.
Yeah, the defense has argued for so much of the case that it's really been a mishandling of how the case was done, and this is maybe just further proof for them that that was...
Yeah, it's interesting, actually. So if you look at this, leads perfectly into it. His family just released a statement this morning, and they point out in their statement, we'll read a little bit of it now. They say, "We're truly disappointed with the trial board's decision as it lacks precedent and unfairly exploits and scapegoats one of their own, a trooper with a 12-year unblemished record." They also say, Proctor and his detectives led a meticulous and thorough investigation of integrity, and despite today's wrongful termination and great harm and defamation this case has inflicted on him and his family, Proctor still believes justice will be served. So the interesting part here that his family has pointed out several times, and so have other people who, the prosecutors and people who have supported him, is that the text messages he sent about Karen Reed were incredibly unflattering, flagrant. But there was no evidence in his text messages of a cover-up,
right?
Of covering evidence or planting evidence. So it's interesting what you choose to believe here. That was not something that was brought up at his trial board hearing. That was not something that was discussed at all. It was just his inappropriate text messages and that drinking allegation. Nothing to do with necessarily his actual handling of evidence in the case.
It's going to be interesting to see where it goes from here. Of course, all eyes will be on the trial again that's starting in just 2 weeks. Now, this morning, when we talk about that family's statement, where do you think the case will go from here after listening to both sides and really being a part of this case from the very beginning?
I mean, I think we'll know more tomorrow. On Thursday, there's another hearing to discuss kind of pretrial issues in this case. But the other thing I would note is that this doesn't only impact Karen Reed's case. There are other cases in Massachusetts where Trooper Proctor was the lead investigator, where defense attorneys in those cases are trying to get certain evidence thrown out because he worked on the case. So whether or not that works, we'll see. I think our legal analyst has said it's unlikely that would work, but there's no doubt that his being fired, and very seriously fired, he was dishonorably discharged, so he can never be a trooper again.
We were talking about that, and that's huge, actually.
Right.
I mean, that's historic, really.
Right. He has the right to appeal this, but state police have indicated that they feel as though they have plenty of evidence that an appeal would not succeed. So it is going to be interesting to see how his firing affects not only Karen Reed's second trial, but other trials coming up for cases he's worked on.
And you mentioned, of course, tomorrow. That is something that we'll be streaming live right here on CBS News Boston. Christina, you have been a part of this case from the beginning. I I think everyone at home can agree it has taken so many twists and turns along this journey, and we'll see where we go from here.
Absolutely.
We will stay tuned for tomorrow as well, so be sure to tune into CBS News Boston for that hearing. Christina, thank you so much, as always.